I believe that the culture that influences us most is not our national culture, what we call in our milieu, we call that passport culture. So, I mean, where you were born and got a passport, that's one thing. But we know that maybe studying somewhere can actually influence you a lot.
The Autoethnographer, your weekly cultural trip around the world. Last week we introduced Dr. Jerome Dumetz, renowned cross-cultural management expert and author. We learned about his passion for cross-cultural studies and his extensive cross-cultural management work in two sectors, business consulting and university teaching. This week, we immediately jump into a conversation about his book, 199 Cross-Cultural Case Studies, Short Stories of Real Cultural Misunderstandings from Around the World and Their Analysis. We'll also explore the topic of AI and whether that technology will have an impact on cross-cultural management. He'll also give some advice for people who are going out and interacting with a different culture for the first time. Grab your coffee or tea and let's get started. Well, I think let's get into what I would say is really the most exciting part of the conversation, which is that you have very recently, I think the ink is still wet almost.
Yeah,
released
it's true.
book.
Yeah, a few weeks ago. Yeah.
And your book is the
Very proud of it.
199 cross-cultural case studies, and it's a massive collection of real life stories that give examples of things gone right, things gone wrong, things gone sideways in intercultural interactions. Let's tell us how it came to that book. What was the inspiration, and what was your journey to get to printing and writing and printing this book?
Right. So it all started years ago. So see back to old oldies with this book. So that's all right. So that's it too. So this is a textbook I published more than 10 years ago, precisely a bit to answer almost the questions that you've just asked, actually. Cross culture. I like to call it cross culture. It's simpler. It doesn't need to be cross cultural management communication. So the influence of culture in the way we work and so on is a relatively new concept. All right, and for years, as I explained, we had a number of authors who came up with very interesting concepts and so on. Great, but at one point, when you're teaching it or as an individual, you want to document yourself about it. There was not really any, best of or some collection that would regroup it all. You needed to have a whole library basically of authors to get the full picture, and because it is a new a new topic. A lot of authors, they're still around. I mean, it's very important. It's very fresh, precisely. So I had an idea of creating a textbook. All right, I thought, hey, I would love as a lecturer, I would love to have a textbook that I could use, simple, where basically the main ideas would be explained with some examples and so on. And so I called all those great authors and all the people I called, they said, "Oh yes, sure. Here's my contribution." So it's really like it's an ensemble cast. I don't know if it applies for books, but I've got really some very very impressive co-authors from Meredith Belbin, who with his famous teamwork, and of course Fons Trompenaars and Craig Storti and different people like that who join, and for each chapter you have also a couple of workshops and case studies that illustrate the concept. All right, short case studies. And over the years, I've been in contact with a number of readers. Most of the readers are fellow lecturers and trainers and so on. And I've been asked repeatedly to send them in different formats the case studies. And personally, I use them a lot. And so over the years, I started to think about maybe a new book that would focus only on case studies. And the reason is because what made this field famous, those models of cross-cultural management from Trompenaars, Hofstede, Richard Lewis. I mean, you got big names like that.
Hmm.
They came up with what we call ethic work, right? So, which is some models that the author is a little bit outside. So you create a theoretical model, right? That's the T for ethic. It's not ethics; it's ethic. And
Hmm.
there exists in anthropology. There exists also emic, where the observer goes inside the culture to observe, right? So if you think of guys like Indiana Jones, all right, you go inside, you observe. And actually, over the years, many people who study this topic come to the conclusion that those models they become toxic for the field itself. You have too often when we try to explain culture, we take the trump card of Hofstede model, Trompenaars model, Lewis triangle, and so on.
Hmm.
And those models over the years, the balance of pros and cons is less and less in their favor, and there are a number of characteristics that makes them dangerous to use, I would say. They carry stereotypes because it's easy to say, oh, yeah, so you're German. So, yeah, well, of course you are like that, which is like, oh, come on. And what about a German who's been all over the world, right? Or I'm French, so you do like that. And also, my own research brought me to the point nowadays where I believe that the culture that influences us most is not our national culture, what we call in our milieu, we call that passport culture. So, I mean, where you
Hmm.
were born and got a passport, that's one thing. But we know that maybe studying somewhere can actually influence you a lot. I mean, maybe you were born in China, but you studied in the US. How much the Chinese culture is influencing you in your way of doing business? Well, maybe not so much. And then you've got also the corporate culture. Everybody knows about that. There are big differences of corporate culture. But I believe a lot that the department culture is probably the area where we should focus more our research in the future, because if you take an individual who was born somewhere, studies somewhere, all right, that influences how you're gonna work. That's clear, but
Hmm.
you get this, first meaningful experience. I mean, I'm not talking about summer jobs and stuff like that, but like after graduation, you're gonna have your first proper job, which is hopefully a little bit related with what you studied. All right, and
Right.
then this experience, I think, is really forming our culture of work. Like if you start your career in accounting versus you start your career in sales, no matter how your career evolves after, I believe very strongly that your perception of how a organization should function and what is a desired management style will stem a lot from this vision that you got from the beginning. It had some sort of an imprint very strongly.
Hmm. Hmm.
Or another example is people who immediately after school, sorry, they create their own company. Entrepreneurs. You meet sometimes colleagues and so on who work in a big company, but you find out that for several years they were entrepreneurs. I mean, it didn't really work, otherwise they wouldn't be necessarily working in the big company. But they got this mindset of like finding a solution, and which people who immediately work for large organizations don't have. And so all that combined led me to think that it's necessary, and this is a discussion I'm having with a lot of other colleagues of
Hmm.
cross-cultural management on all those discussion platforms, forums, and so on. That actually case studies is a better answer, because you're gonna have people with multiple identities. I mean, nowadays it's no longer extraordinary to deal with people who speak foreign languages, who've been
Hmm.
traveling abroad, who've got parents that are maybe coming from different cultures. I mean, we meet people like that all over the place, and it's more interesting to observe a particular situation with all the context, and the
Hmm.
context will be essential in a case study. That's basically what the case study is about. Is we look at small set of context, we look at whether the author worked it out or not. I've got some cases where the author just acknowledged that something got wrong, all right, or it was puzzling or something. Sometimes the author also explains how they got out of the trouble, which is also very good. And then after, of course, I propose an analysis. So the analysis is based on cross-cultural concept. But that's already. I mean, it's a bonus. I mean, maybe some people are just interested in reading those cases, and they'll be very happy with that. Maybe others will be happy to read my analysis, which I try to make as concise as possible. There is a thick glossary at the end still, so that you understand the terms. And I guess lots of people will disagree with my analysis because, after all, we talk about culture, all right? I don't claim I've got the absolute understanding of the situation. It's just some tendency.
So these case studies, how big are they? How long are they typically?
They're very short, actually. They're typically one page long. All right, enough so that to be photocopied. Because same story. I mean, there are plenty of case studies for different topics that exist, and not necessarily in cross-cultural management. But I mean, when I was a student, I had sometimes 50 pages case study, in finance and stuff like that. That's not the purpose here. It's really to illustrate a point, right? So you talk about the concept of how do we react when people follow the rules and don't follow the rules and this kind of stuff. And so it's short examples to say, hey, look, this and this happens. Well, why? Because those people have a different understanding about how we react when someone breaks the rules. Oh, yes. Okay, nice. So once you understand that, you can think of it differently. Yeah. It is inspired actually from a very successful book from Craig Storti, who very nicely wrote a nice blurb for the book. Craig Storti published many years ago a short book called Cultural Dialogues, Cross-Cultural Dialogues, and in this short book he came up with like it says, some short dialogues, but like it's a few lines and there's no context. Right, and you need to figure out what is at play here. So it's a wonderful resource, the work of Craig Storti, and so I wanted to do something a little bit along the same style, but this time to provide the context with short examples.
Was he the one that wrote the endorsement that went that your book is like a piercing light into that darkness?
Very same one.
Our blindness of our deepest assumptions. I
no,
love
that was Fons. That's Fons Trompenaars. That's Fons Trompenaars. But But Craig Storti also wrote an endorsement. Very nice one. Yes.
So what would you say are the biggest in your opinion? And I know there are millions of people and everybody is different, but generally speaking, what would you think are the biggest blind spots that people struggle with in these cross-cultural interactions?
It's almost always the same thing. It's the assumption that people think like us, that we look at the world through only one perspective, and we think this is the world. And so it's always a shock to realize that if you move a little bit on a different perspective, you see the world a little different. And sometimes you got someone who's standing on the other side and they look at the opposite, right? What you see as black, they see white, and so on. And so that would be the major issue, because it concerns all of us. And of course, when you grow up in an environment when you are being explained that there are different perspectives, different ideas, different cultures, you're a little bit more prepared. So some people are totally unprepared. They live in an environment that is in some sort of cultural denial. Culture is not even a thing. It's just the world is like that, and that's it. It's my way or the highway. And so those ones usually they fall off really from the steps. but yes, I would say that this inability
Hmm.
to accept that people look at the world differently. Yeah.
I remember it was my first overseas assignment as a very young general manager, and I was walking on the street in Cairo with one of my colleagues, and I just was looking around, and I said, I love this chaos." And my colleague stopped, and he looks all around us, and he goes, "Mr. John, what exactly are you talking about?" And I said, "All of this chaos." And he said, "Oh, you mean what's on the street?" And he goes, "This is normal."
Exactly.
You know, and
Yeah.
for me, it was viewed as a chaotic situation where I couldn't sort all of the different activities going on the street. And for him, it is absolutely a completely normal day on the streets of Cairo.
But the next step, I would say, is to accept that the concept of normality is something very relative, which is it's counterintuitive. I mean, normality. I mean, when people say, "Oh, but it's normal thing to do. This is a normal way," doesn't imply that it should be relative, and it is the most relative concept that can exist. What we
Hmm.
consider normal is in reality what we used to do, or to be more precise, what we like to do. That's what we consider normal.
Right.
You know, think about normal food, normal clothes, normal way to speak. In reality, it's we project ourselves to the world. We hope the world's going to be like us. It rarely is.
No, you're absolutely correct. That's right. Normal is so hard to define because it's from every different perspective. So who is your audience for your book? And by the way, I'm going to make sure that there's a link to be able to purchase your book in the show notes later.
Thank you. The audience, so it's hard to answer. I mean, obviously, anyone who's using material of cross culture for their activities. So it can be lecturers, it can be HR specialists, it can be some trainers. But I do believe that it will interest a lot of people who are just interested in discovering examples of
Hmm.
how other people live, how other people react, behave, because I've tried to be as eclectic as possible. I mean, it's not just a business book. Actually, business cases, they represent a little bit less than half of the cases, because, well, for instance, there are a lot of examples about studying abroad. Well, so a lot of my students who came up with those cases, and they experience, you know, you go study abroad, you studying style, where do you study, and so on, different teaching styles, and so on. And I've got also, when I was sorting out all the cases, that took me a long time, of course. I discovered a lot of cases actually are not about international setting, right? And as I said, I believe that's the future of that field, is to appear no longer as a topic that is exclusively for international studies, right, like international business or international communication, but to
Hmm.
become just a one of the pillars of just management, because I've got a lot of cases that are people working in the same company, and you've got subsidiaries calling. So yes, there's an international aspect, but also uh, eternally between subsidiaries and headquarters, it's day and night,
Right.
and you've got also people of different departments that don't mix very well. Typically, marketing and finance and so on. And so I've got a lot of cases like that that I think should also be relatable for a lot of people. And I have a soft spot among so I got about 12 chapters, right? And one of the chapters I like most, of course, are the family stories. So family stories and what we call the third culture kids. So people who are in between two cultures, so they come up with their own. So that's what we call third culture
Yes.
kids. And so I have a number of wonderful examples like that about the other side. I mean, when if you come from a family where it's been only a monocultural, you have no idea behind the scene how it works, right? So that's and at the end I got a number of longer cases also because during my quest I came across very interesting stories that were very different format, but I thought, oh, they could interest some people. So some are several pages long, and I think they got their place too there.
Great. I was very appreciative that before you published the book, I had a chance to see some of those cases. You had shared those
Mhm.
with me, and I can only urge the audience, the listening audience. It's really well written and it's highly interesting. You can probably read all of it through in a day because it's so interesting. You can't put it down. That's
Wonderful.
from my opinion.
Okay,
So
very glad to
so
hear that.
it, advice you mentioned a moment ago about normal and people stepping into a different culture. um I'm thinking about expats, and you've
Mm,
coached countless ones in
mm.
business or the families or the spouses. What would you think is the single biggest piece of advice that you would give to a person who is prospectively about to move abroad?
Well, probably the same advice that we would give to that a wise manager would give to a young one, which is don't rush, take your time. Uh, Most of the times, again, so it's the mirror answer to the previous one, to the previous question. The single biggest problem is people assuming that the world is the same as their immediate environment, and it is not. So how not to fall in that trap is to just get this, split moment of hesitation, which prevents you from just going with your momentum and to crash. So sometimes you just pause a little bit. You press the pause button a little bit, and that's usually enough to ask yourself, hold on a second, is it really how things are done here? Is it normal for them? Is that the way they do? And most of the time it's enough, this sort of or just asking, like you're about to take a decision, and you pause, and instead of behaving like you would do at home, which would be considered normal for you, you ask a local. Oh, I'm sorry. For me, it's very odd this moment. Is it normal for you? Sometimes it's not, right? Sometimes even for locals, they say, no, 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 you don't do that here. So you need to get the law. And one question, for instance, I came to ask myself. I ask others regularly. Is not the right question is not to ask what should I do, because again, when you're a foreigner, often the locals, they don't want to bother you, they don't want to offend you. So the answer is usually, well, you do as you want, everything's all right, right? Which is not true. It's not true.
Right.
So
Right.
a better question is, what would you do? Right, so you're with a colleague who's local, and you're like, you go to the restaurant, like, oh, what should I take? Oh, you take what you want. Yeah, but what will you take? Oh, well, I'm gonna take that. All right. Do you think I will like it? Well, you try. Okay, you try. So because people answer differently what they think you should do and what they think they should do, and focusing on what they should do brings you a little bit closer to the cultural norm of the place. But generally, to take your time. You take your time, and it comes of course, with age, when you've got a little bit more experience and you look at situation a little bit from a distance, and you're like, oh, hold on a second, maybe we need to be careful. Maybe I should ask someone else. Maybe I should let things a little bit settle down. Maybe I should not react, immediately. And that's usually enough. Yeah, to
No,
listen
that's
instead of
a
talking.
really good word of advice. I know that I always tried to honestly rush into it. I would buy
Mm,
uh, again, this is 20 years ago,
mm.
books. If people remember books, you remember books,
I
clearly.
do. My kids.
Some people don't. But I would buy books before I would move to a new country, and I would try to
Mm.
devour three, four, five books on the culture of that country to try to understand the culture before I even arrived. And of course, that doesn't really work because you're not in it. You don't see the people. You're just reading literally theory. And
Yeah, but
um,
it's still useful because it gives you the foundations. Still, you're much more prepared when you read the facts. I mean,
right.
content. I mean, I don't know exactly how to put it, but knowledge. I mean, I actually with some colleagues who work on the field of cultural competence. I don't always
Mhm.
agree. Maybe that's my own cultural background, but I do believe that that knowledge is, I mean, predates the attitude and behavior in when we're talking of culture.
Mhm.
Uh, do your homework, learn about the culture in books and asking questions and so on. You're going to be better prepared to then adapt your attitude and behavior. But well, it's an open discussion. Other people think that
Right.
you need to come with an open mind, and then you know nothing, and you're going to be fed with information. I mean, it's also valid. Yeah. But I can give you an example about that, if like one that I apply all the time. So in when we talk about cross cultural communication, which is one element of cultural management, we there is a very important element called the paralanguage. So paralanguage is about what not what we say, but how we say it. So the way we speak, right?
Mhm.
And this is very tricky because when we use a foreign language, we speak a foreign language, but our paralinguistics usually comes from our mother tongue. I'm not talking of accent here. It's again
Mhm.
something else. But an important element in this subcategory of cultural studies is turn taking, which is how we structure a conversation, right? So when we're having a formal conversation, I mean, not of course when you go to with some friends in pubs and so on, then it doesn't apply, of course. But when you're having a formal conversation, everybody knows that it's like you go on a job interview, you're going to meet the future in-laws or politician or somebody important, and you know that you need to be careful as much what you say, but when you're going to talk, right? And so cultures vary a lot for that in their norms. So norms are really like the rules that we expect people to follow. And so in some cultures, we're having a bit the walkie-talkie type, right? So
Mhm.
today we use that because, of course, on video it's better. One speaks, the other one doesn't speak and listens, and so it's really on off on off. But in some other cultures, which you will find all around the Mediterranean, for instance, it's much more common to combine, right? I speak, and I'm sorry, you see, since the beginning, I keep interrupting you because I have this tendency to overlap a little bit, which from a cultural perspective means I'm engaged in the conversation, right? Whereas in the other cultures where it's a walkie-talkie type, we show respect by remaining silent. So those are two very different styles. Now, I work in Czechia, and the Czech are what I call the walkie-talkie type. All right, one after the other. Okay. I'm not. However, with my job at the university, I'm frequently, of course, in meetings with lots of colleagues and so on. And over the years, I have, I would say, restrained myself voluntarily to speak whenever I wanted. Oh, there's a linguistic aspect. So my Czech is very poor, but so maybe I misunderstand what's the exact discussion. But mostly because I've noticed that waiting till the end of the discussion about a particular topic and then sharing my opinion will carry more weight in the final decision of the group than if in the middle of the discussion I intervene, right? I mean, I could really measure that. And so that's an example exactly how you can modify your behavior that brings you some benefits.
That's fascinating. I never thought about that style. How do I want to call it? Where you wait, wait your
Yeah,
turn.
yeah.
I think I'm German by heritage, so I tend to be very definitively walkie-talkie.
Yes, yes. For you, it's natural, not normal. We
Correct.
don't use natural in cross culture. It's a tricky word.
Yes, yeah. So I have speaking of the word natural, I have
Yeah.
a word that's rather unnatural, which is uh, artificial intelligence,
Mm,
and I'm thinking, you know, this is getting into every aspect of our lives, and I'm thinking, how does AI ultimately influence the work that you're doing? You have as far as language is concerned, you have
mm,
these translators that are almost
mm,
simultaneous translators, and that's just purely language. But
mm.
where do you see AI somehow stepping in and playing a role when it comes to actual cross-cultural relations?
Well, AI is, in my opinion, it's a fancy word that replaces just computers. All right, it's just we've had computers for many years that were doing automated processes. It just got more and more refined in guessing what we want. In cross culture, it's of course it's a very useful tool. I'm not going to deny the translation issue, which is now near perfect. Even slangish and
Mhm.
irony can be quite 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 understood well. Again, it's a matter of data. Basically, the more data you got, the more you can find it. And if we were just talking about analyzing cases, it does a fair job, right? Because we're using methods on it. However, in real life, precisely AI yet, I don't know, maybe there's gonna, I mean, maybe it's a question of a prompt, but doesn't have this questioning attitude, right? It's still
Mhm.
very streamlined, right? So there's a question we go from A to B and so on, and then there's C and D. Whereas in cross culture, I believe that it's always important to take a step on the side and say, "Oh, hold on a second, maybe they didn't mean that." So unless you prompt the AI to think on the step outside, well, then you don't need the
Mhm.
AI because you've done the job yourself already. so,
Yeah.
so that's one thing. But actually, AI is also one of the reasons for that book, by the way,
Mhm.
because I mean, virtually we can ask AI to illustrate any concept with a million examples. Yeah, but nothing replaces real, uh, authentic cases because
Mhm.
when you read that, you're like, no, but come on, that's not possible, or they didn't understand that is wrong, and so on. And so I think precisely with the surge of increasingly artificial material,
Mhm.
we need to get back to the real life because even if we use AI every day, at the end it is us human taking the decision of our life, talking to people and so on. So it's an interesting tool, and actually that's going to be one of my coming project with a colleague of mine who's specialized on AI, because in my university there's a department specialized on that. And we are going to work on looking at the cultural bias of the different models, because it's pretty obvious that the AI models have been culturally shaped.
Mhm.
uh, I think it's a big problem actually, because we we use AI a little bit like a neutral oracle, which it is not. It's neither an oracle nor neutral, and I think there is interesting work to do in this direction. Yeah.
That's a fascinating perspective. The fact that AI itself has a inherent bias, just like the rest of us do. In this case,
I
it's
had a little.
programmed in there by somebody.
I had a little example a few days ago. I was working with a graphic designer who was looking at one of my pictures, right? And she was saying that the picture was not good quality, all right? So she said, "Oh, I'm going to go through AI to increase the resolution." And the picture, we see only one arm, right? The other one, we don't see my hand. Okay, and so the AI, it grew one hand, right? and it's very well done. It's very well done because that's just to expand a little bit the size of the picture. But funny thing is that I'm married and I wear a wedding ring, but for so totally different reasons, I wear my wedding ring on the right hand, which which not so common. I mean, Orthodox people do that. I'm not Orthodox, but I do it. And so I laugh because the hand that was created actually added a ring on my left hand. So on the picture, I end up with two wedding rings, which is one too many. My wife wasn't too happy, but I don't know if it's just one of those hallucinations or if it is also a cultural bias that, well, most people wear their wedding ring on the left, right? Well.
That's a really great observation, and I'm glad that you got through this with your wife. I'm sure there was a bottle of red wine involved.
I just cropped the picture at the end. There was no compromise possible.
So, Jerome, I really appreciate the example you just gave. I do think we're going to wind down the episode now, and I wanted to really thank you for the time you spent today. It's, number one, a pleasure to catch up again after a long time and to learn a lot about what you have been doing and to hear the story behind your book. Is there anything that you would like to leave as a last word for the listeners and viewers?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me in this podcast. It was been a very fun experience, and I hope your listeners will be able to relate what we discussed. I'm particularly thankful to you because I know you've got a vast international experience, so you can you understand what I'm talking about very well. You have also a lot of examples that you can share. So that's great. The second thing is that I hope the book will be of interest to some of your listeners. They should give it a try. And to answer your last question, look at the world with new eyes if you can. We get comfortable in our vision of the world. We think it's how it is, how it should be, and how it will be, but it never turns out to be like that. So looking a little bit outside the frame usually gives great opportunities.
Those are great words of advice. Great words of advice, especially for anybody. Well, it works anywhere under any conditions, not only, of course, for intercultural interactions. But again, thank you very much for joining today. And with that, I'm going to close the episode for this week. Thank you to the listeners for joining in. I'll make sure that the link to Jerome's book is down in the show notes, as well as any other information that he would like to share with you. And with that, I'll see you next week. Keep on driving. Thank you for joining us on today's journey. Please remember to like and subscribe to the Auto Ethnographer and leave us a rating or comment. For more information, visit our website at auto-ethnographer.com. You can also follow on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.